They say the scariest moment in any war is not when your enemy charges at you with weapons blazing, it's not when the missiles rain down from orbit, or when the shields fail and vacuum threatens to swallow your ship whole. The scariest moment is when you realize you never understood your enemy at all. For the Jathic Dominion, that moment came when War Master Krelak opened his eyes in a human medical facility and understood, with crystalline horror, that being the sole survivor of the Battle of Proxima wasn't a blessing. It was a death sentence of a different kind, because humans don't just fight wars. They turn war itself into an art form so vicious, so calculated, so fundamentally wrong by every galactic standard that the Collective Council had spent 2 centuries pretending humanity didn't exist. And now, Krelax knew why. Now he knew what they'd been hiding, and the knowledge was going to break him. The pain arrived first. Not the sharp, clean pain of combat injuries that Krelax had experienced 100 times across 30 years of military service. This was different. This was the deep, grinding ache of regenerated tissue, of bones that had been shattered and rebuilt, of organs that had been liquefied by explosive decompression and somehow coaxed back into function. Krelax's second set of eyes opened before his primary pair. The ceiling above him glowed with soft bioluminescence, a pale blue that his species found soothing. Someone had done their research. That fact alone sent ice through his circulatory system. His primary eyes cracked open. The room came into focus. White walls, not the sterile white of Jathic medical bays, but something warmer, textured. Equipment lined one wall, devices he didn't recognize humming with quiet purpose. A window took up the far wall, and through it he could see stars. Wrong stars. The constellations were alien to him, which meant he was far from Dominion space, far from any hope of rescue or reinforcement. His chest cavity tightened, the smaller of his 3 hearts beginning to race. "You're awake." The voice came from his left. Krelax's head turned, movement sending fresh waves of discomfort through his frame. A human stood beside his bed. Female, he thought, though telling with his species required careful observation. She wore simple clothing in muted greys, her dark hair pulled back from her face, no uniform, no rank insignia, nothing to indicate her role or position. Her eyes were brown. He'd heard about human eyes, how they came in colors that seemed pointless from an evolutionary standpoint. Brown, blue, green, no tactical advantage, no environmental adaptation, just chaos written into their genetics. "Where?" Krelax's voice emerged as a rasp. His translator implant kicked in, converting his native clicks and whistles into human standard speech. "Where am I?" Medical Station Tartarus, Oort Cloud, Sol System. The human's face remained neutral. "You've been unconscious for 6 weeks. Your injuries were extensive." 6 weeks. The Battle of Proxima had happened 6 weeks ago. Krelax's memory of it came in fragments. The Dominion fleet had jumped into the system expecting a minor human outpost. Intelligence had suggested 3 defensive platforms, maybe 2 light frigates. Easy pickings for a battle group of 20 Dominion warships. They'd found 67 human vessels waiting for them. The battle had lasted 11 minutes. "My crew," Krelax managed. "The Sovereign Talon. My ship." The human's expression shifted. Not quite sympathy, but something adjacent to it. "You're the only survivor we recovered. I'm sorry." His crew. Warriors he'd served alongside for years. Gone. Krelax felt the grief trying to surface, but training pushed it down. "Grieve later, understand now." "Why am I alive?" He forced the question out. "Your species doesn't take prisoners. The Collective knows this. Everyone knows this. We take prisoners sometimes." The human moved closer, and Krelax noticed she carried no weapons. Brave or foolish? When there's something we need to understand. The ice in his blood turned to frozen nitrogen. "You want information? We want to talk." She pulled a chair over and sat, putting herself at eye level with him. "My name is Dr. Sarah Chen. I'm a xenopsychologist, which means I study how different species think, how they process the world, how they make decisions." A psychologist. Krelax felt his mandibles click in what his species used as laughter, though it came out bitter. "You pulled me from the wreckage to study me like an insect." "We pulled you from the wreckage because you were alive." Chen's voice remained calm. "What we do with that fact is up to you." Krelax tried to sit up. His body screamed in protest, but he managed to prop himself on his secondary arms. The room spun, then stabilized. "I am War Master Krelax of the Sovereign Talon, Dominion Fleet, 3rd Battle Group. Under Collective Accord, Section 12, Article 8, I am required to provide only my name and rank. The Collective Accord doesn't apply to humanity." Chen leaned back in her chair. "We're not signatories. Never have been. Because the Collective won't let you join." The words came out harsher than Krelax intended. "Because your species is savage. Because you fight wars in ways that violate every civilized standard. Chen's eyebrows rose, just slightly. Is that what they teach you? It's what everyone knows. Humanity appeared in the galactic community 200 years ago, and within 50 years, every species had agreed to maintain minimal contact. You're quarantined. Contained. Because you're dangerous. Dangerous. Chen repeated the word like she was tasting it. Tell me, War Master, what exactly did you think would happen when your fleet jumped into our home system? Kralak said nothing. The answer was obvious. They'd planned to destroy the outpost, seize whatever technology looked valuable, and leave. Standard conquest protocol. The Dominion had used it on 17 other systems in the past decade alone. Let me guess, Chen continued. Your intelligence said we were weak, disorganized. That humans fight among themselves so much that we'd crumble under real pressure. She wasn't wrong. That had been exactly what the briefing materials had said. Your intelligence was partially correct. Chen stood, walking to the window. We do fight among ourselves, constantly. We have wars over resources, territory, ideology, religion, access to water, historical grievances that go back thousands of years. We've nearly destroyed ourselves at least 6 times that we can document. Kralak watched her silhouette against the stars. Then why aren't you extinct? Because we're really, really good at war. She turned back to him. We've had practice. Lots of practice. And when something threatens all of us, we remember how to focus. The pieces started clicking together in Kralax's mind. The ambush at Proxima, the precision of the human fleet's movements, the way they'd targeted specific systems on each Dominion ship, as if they knew exactly where to strike for maximum damage. You knew we were coming. Chen nodded. We've known about the Dominion's expansion pattern for years. We'd been watching, waiting, learning how you think, how you fight, how you make decisions. Spies, Kralak's mandibles clicked again, sharper this time. You infiltrated our systems. We didn't need to. You broadcast everything. Your ships use standard collective communication protocols. Your tactical networks have encryption that we cracked in about 45 minutes. Your command structure is so rigid that once we understood the decision tree your war masters follow, we could predict your movements 3 engagements in advance. The clinical way she described it made Kralax's skin crawl. That's impossible. Dominion security is the best in the collective. The best in the collective, maybe. Chen returned to her chair. But the collective has been at peace for generations. Real peace. The kind where nobody seriously thinks about war anymore. Your entire military tradition is based on intimidation and overwhelming force against weaker opponents. She leaned forward. You've never fought someone who fights back. Not really. Not the way humans do. Kralak wanted to argue, but his memory of the battle kept replaying. The human ships had moved in patterns that defied tactical sense. They'd sacrificed vessels to create openings, used debris fields as cover, fired weapons from angles that should have been impossible. And they'd done it all with a coordination that suggested they'd practiced this exact scenario hundreds of times. How many? He asked quietly. How many what? How many simulations did you run? How many times did you fight that battle before we ever arrived? Chen smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. 43,718. We ran it as a training scenario for every combat crew in the Solar Defense Fleet. Different variables each time. Different Dominion ship configurations. Different tactical approaches. By the time you actually showed up, we'd seen every possible way that battle could unfold. 43,000 simulations. Kralax felt his secondary heart stutter. That's insane. That's preparation. Chen stood again. War Master, I need you to understand something. Humanity doesn't fight wars the way you do. We don't show up with superior numbers and expect the enemy to surrender. We don't rely on intimidation or tradition or honor. She walked to the door, then paused. We study, we prepare, we simulate. We learn every possible weakness, every exploitable flaw, every psychological pressure point, and then we apply force with precision so exact that it looks like savagery to anyone who doesn't understand what they're watching. You're describing genocide. No. Chen's voice went cold. We're describing survival. Your species chose to attack our home. You brought 20 warships into Sol System with the intention of killing everyone in your path and taking whatever you wanted. What did you expect us to do? Surrender? Kralak had no answer. The Dominion had assumed exactly that. Humans were supposed to be disorganized, cowardly, easy to intimidate. The intelligence briefings had been clear. The intelligence briefings had been catastrophically wrong. Get some rest, Chen said, her tone softening slightly. We'll talk more when you're stronger. There's a lot you need to understand about why you're still alive. She left. The door closed behind her with a soft hiss. Kralak stared at the ceiling, his mind racing through implications. The humans had let him survive, not out of mercy. They had a reason. They always had a reason. He thought about Chen's words, a xenopsychologist, Someone who studied how species think. They were going to pick his brain apart. Learn everything about Dominion military doctrine, tactical thinking, decision-making processes. They were going to use him to understand his entire species. And there was nothing he could do to stop them. Because if what Chen said was true, if humans really had been preparing for this conflict for years, studying and simulating and learning, then they already knew more about the Dominion than the Dominion knew about itself. The scariest part wasn't being a prisoner, it was realizing he'd never stood a chance. 3 days passed before Chen returned. Krelak had spent the time healing and thinking. The medical facility was comfortable, almost luxurious by military standards. The food was adequate, synthesized to match Zatic nutritional requirements. The staff, all human, were professional and distant. No one hurt him. No one threatened him. No one even asked him questions beyond basic medical assessments. It was more unsettling than any interrogation could have been. When Chen finally walked through the door, Krelak was standing by the window, watching Earth turn slowly in the distance. The blue-green sphere dominated the view, continents visible through swirls of white cloud. It looked peaceful. Deceptively so. Beautiful, isn't it? Chen said. It looks fragile. Krelak didn't turn. I've seen the surveys. Your planet is in the habitable zone by the narrowest margin. Slightly closer or farther from your star, and none of this would exist. Fragile is right. Chen joined him at the window. We came very close to destroying it ourselves. Multiple times. Nuclear war, environmental collapse, engineered plagues. Pick your apocalypse. But you survived. We learned. She gestured at the planet below. Every catastrophe taught us something. Every war showed us a new way to kill each other, which meant we had to develop new ways to not die. It's a terrible education, but it's effective. Kralax finally looked at her. Why am I really here, Dr. Chen? I told you. We need to understand. No. He cut her off. You could have extracted my neural patterns while I was unconscious, mapped my brain chemistry, analyzed my decision-making processes without ever waking me up. Your medical technology is clearly advanced enough. Chen's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Respect, maybe. You're right, she admitted. We could have done all of that. Then why didn't you? She walked to the small table in the room and sat down. After a moment, Krelux joined her. His body still ached, but movement was getting easier. Because there's a difference between data and understanding, Chen said. I can scan your brain and see how you process tactical information. I can map the neural pathways that activate during stress responses. I can quantify your species' cultural values based on neurochemical patterns. She tapped the table with one finger. But that doesn't tell me why you chose military service. It doesn't explain what you were thinking when you realized the Battle of Proxima was going wrong. It doesn't show me how you're processing this situation right now. You want me to betray my people. I want you to help prevent a war. Chen's voice was steady. War Master, the Dominion sent one battle group. When they don't return, what happens next? Krelax knew the answer. Standard protocol. They'll send a larger fleet. Minimum 50 warships, probably 100. And we'll destroy them too. No hesitation in her voice. We'll destroy every fleet they send. We'll do it efficiently, with minimal human casualties, because we've already started running simulations for larger engagements. Eventually, the Dominion will escalate. They'll commit their full military, thousands of ships, and we'll fight that too, because humans are very good at scaling up. We've been doing it for our entire history. You can't defeat the entire Dominion fleet. Probably not. Chen shrugged. We'd take heavy losses. But we'd make sure those losses cost your people everything. We'd target your shipyards, your logistics networks, your command infrastructure. We'd fight the kind of war where even if you won, you'd be so damaged that every other collective species would see you as weak. The casual way she described civilizational destruction made Krell Axe's blood run cold. But there's another option, Chen continued. You help us understand the Dominion's strategic thinking. You explain why your leadership chose to attack Sol. You give us context for how your species makes decisions at the highest levels. So you can manipulate us. So we can talk to you. She met his eyes. Right now, humanity and the Dominion are on a path to mutual destruction. Not because either of us wants it, but because we don't understand each other. You thought we were weak. We thought you'd learn from the first battle and back off. The Dominion never backs off. I know. We figured that out from your ship's database. Chen smiled without humor. Which is why we need to change the conversation before this gets worse. Kralak sat back, processing. You want me to be a bridge, a translator between our species? I want you to help us figure out how to make the Dominion leadership understand that attacking humanity is a losing proposition without actually having to destroy your entire civilization to prove it. They won't listen. Dominion pride, is based on never having faced a real challenge. Chen interrupted. But pride is flexible when survival is at stake. We just need to find the right pressure points, the right arguments, the right way to frame the situation so they can retreat without losing face. It made sense. Horrible, manipulative sense. The kind of thinking that confirmed everything the collective said about humans, and Krelix realized, with dawning horror, that he was going to help them. Not because he wanted to betray the Dominion, but because Chen was right. The path his people were on led to destruction. Either they'd destroy humanity, which seemed increasingly unlikely, or humanity would destroy them while making it look easy. What do you need from me? Chen's expression softened. Tell me about your leadership. How do they make decisions? What do they value? What scares them? Krelak looked out at Earth again. Everything, he said quietly. They're scared of everything. That's why they conquer. Why they expand. The Dominion leadership has spent 3 generations building an empire because they're terrified of being weak. Weak compared to what? To the collective. To history. He turned back to her. My species used to be prey, Dr. Chen. 1 million years ago we were hunted by apex predators on our homeworld. We survived by becoming smarter, more organized, more willing to use violence in coordinated ways. Chen nodded slowly, understanding dawning on her face. When we reached the stars and found the collective, we discovered we were physically weaker than most species, smaller, fewer advantages. So we compensated by being more aggressive, more willing to fight. We built our entire culture around never being prey again. And now you've run into a species that's better at violence than you are. Yes, the admission hurt. You're what we're afraid of becoming. What we're afraid has always been out there, waiting. Chen was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was different, gentler. War Master, every intelligent species I've studied has the same fear. Being prey, being vulnerable, being wiped out by something stronger. She gestured at Earth. Humans included. The difference is that we channeled that fear into preparation instead of conquest. We assumed the universe was hostile, so we made ourselves very good at surviving hostile environments, by becoming the most hostile thing in those environments. Exactly. She stood, which is why this conversation matters. Because right now, the Dominion sees humanity as a threat to be eliminated. But we could be something else. We could be an example of how to survive in a dangerous universe without needing to dominate it. Krelak wanted to believe that. He wanted to think there was a path forward that didn't end in blood. But he had seen the human fleet in action. He'd watched them dismantle 20 Dominion warships with surgical precision. He'd felt the moment when he realized his entire species had fundamentally misunderstood what they were facing. I'll help you, he said. But understand something, Dr. Chen. When the Dominion leadership learns what I'm doing, they'll label me a traitor. My name will be erased from military records. My family will be shamed. I know. Chen's voice was soft. And I'm sorry, but this is bigger than one person's honor. Is it? Krelak met her eyes. Or is this just another way your species fights wars? By turning enemies into assets, by breaking down their resistance through understanding and manipulation? Chen didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice carried something Krelax hadn't heard before. Honesty, raw and unfiltered. Both, she said. It's both. Yes, we're using you. Yes, we're manipulating the situation to our advantage. That's what we do. That's how we survive. She walked to the door, then paused. But we're also genuinely trying to prevent a war that will kill billions. We're trying to find a solution that doesn't end with your species broken or mine damaged. That's real too. How do I know which motivation is stronger? Chen smiled, sad and tired. You don't. That's the thing about humans, War Master. We're complex. We can want 2 contradictory things simultaneously and pursue both with equal intensity. She left him alone with that thought. Krelak stood at the window for a long time, watching Earth turn. Somewhere down on that fragile blue sphere, billions of humans lived their lives. They fought and loved and built and destroyed, all tangled together in patterns so complex that even they couldn't fully understand themselves. And somehow, that species had become the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. Not because they were stronger or smarter or more advanced, but because they'd learned how to turn everything, even their own weaknesses, into weapons. The real secret of humanity wasn't their technology or their tactics. It was that they'd spent their entire existence fighting themselves, which meant they understood conflict in ways no other species could match. They'd been at war for so long they'd forgotten how to be anything else. And now Krelax was going to help them win one more. I had seen war before, but never human rage up close. HFY sci-fi story.